Welcome to the first part of the React time tracking app tutorial series. I am Andres Villalba. I'm a sales engineer at Sencha, and let me tell you a little bit about me. I have been a web developer since 2001, and I have used several front-end and back-end technologies through the years. In this series, we will be creating a time tracker application by taking the power of Ext.js into React. ReExt will allow us to do just that. The time tracker application that we will create will have a login screen. It will allow managers to assign productive and unproductive tasks to their team members and, of course, track their progress. I will explain more about this application in detail in a few minutes. But first, before we start, I should let you know exactly what we will cover in this series. We have 8 sessions prepared for you, although this may vary depending on the questions and engagement we get from all of you. Today, what we will be covering is just basically ReExt. It will be an introduction, what it is, how to install it, where can we get it, what can we do with it. On session 2, we will learn about ReExt components. We will take a look at a few of them. We will see some examples and tutorials. On session 3, we will start our actual project. We will create the navigation for our application. And on session 4, we will add a login form and session management. Of course, we'll be using React and we will be using ReExt for all our components. On session 5, we will create the admin grid. This is where managers will get to create tasks and assign them. On session 6, we will be looking at theming, meaning we will give the style and the design to our application. We will be using Sencha Themer for this, and we will learn how to apply it to our application. Then on session 7, we will create another grid, and this one will be the user grid. Here, users will take the tasks that were assigned to them. They will click on the start button and the tracking will start. Then they can pause or end the task and start a new one. Finally, on session 8, we will get to create all the reports, meaning we will be creating a summary grid with the time and a report to be sent to clients to let them know how our team spend their time. And we will be creating charts from the basic ones, meaning bar charts and pie charts. We will be using some other kinds of charts that Sencha has for us. And we will be putting everything together. We will do a small review and we will see how everything works. Before we start today's session, let me get our expectations in place. This is a front-end tutorial. We will be working with the front end. We won't touch, apart from the database, anything from the back end. We will have the endpoints created for us. So I will describe how they work, but I won't get to see any of the code for the backend. If you want to see it, maybe we can add a final session where we can talk about that. But the idea of this series is to get to look at the front end. The back end is agnostic, meaning you can have whatever you want. Tencha, as I just said, is backend agnostic. So you can have Embarcadero's RAD server, you can have PHP, you can have Laravel, you can have Ruby, you can have Python, .NET, or any other framework of your choosing. As long as you have endpoints, we will be able to connect to them and gather information from those endpoints. The topics we will be covering today, it's a basic introduction. I will show you what we will be building. We will be talking about the required software and tools. We will talk about what is Sencha XJS, how to get ReExt, how to install both XJS and ReExt, and how to build our first application. Anyways, like I previously mentioned, with our time tracker, we will be having two user roles. The first one is the admin users. Those are the managers. Those are the ones that will get to create and assign tasks. Then users that are going to start tasks and whose time is going to be tracked. We will have tasks, and those tasks will include both productive and unproductive activities. The idea here is that productive activities can be charged to the clients and non-productive activities won't have any monetary value. Activities can be draft, they can be assigned, in progress, finished, or canceled. There will be two main grids. The first grid, like I previously mentioned, it's the grid for managers, and the second grid is the one that will be used by users. And then we will have reports where we have our dashboard and charts, and also that summary grid that I was telling you about, where we will be able to export our data. For this project, we will be using NPM, React, Vite, Sencha XJS, and the IDE of your choosing. I will be using Microsoft Code, but you can use whatever you want. We need a working SDK from Sencha. If you don't have one, you can use the trial and the remote XJS license. I won't be covering how to install NPM, React, or Vite. If you're here, I'm assuming you know how to install those three. If you don't, we can share a link or you can just Google it. It's quite easy to do. What is Sencha XJS? Well, it is an enterprise-ready JavaScript UI framework. It has several years in the market. It's one of the oldest frameworks out there, which means it's also the most complete UI components and JS grid in the world. So why choose it? Why are we choosing this framework? Well, like I just said, it has a rich set of UI components. It's highly productive. It will get you to market faster. The performance is quite high. It is extremely secure, and it has a lot of platform and browser support. Let me show you a little bit about the components that are available with Sencha. It has more than 140. It has anything from grids, trees, charts, even a fully working calendar, pivot grids. It can completely work with the D3 adapter. It has a lot of components. I'm just gonna click on a few at random. So it has a data view. It has components to work with dragging. It has some other components for forms. Um, for example, numbers, date fields, time fields, even combo boxes. There are a lot of them. So it will make it easier for you to work. You can search here in our kitchen sink and you can see how the different components work. And if you're interested, if you're working directly with XGS, you can look at the code on the right. Like I was saying, there are a lot of components, different types there. You have charts, different kinds of them. They are completely customizable, meaning you can change the color, you can change the theme, you can change how they look in a general way. Like I was saying, there's also a calendar, and it's quite complete. As you can see, the code, it's quite simple and quite short, and you can get a fully working calendar. And the most powerful one that XJS has, it's a grid. Out of the box, it has column order, it has sorting, it has also filters. They can run the back end, they can run on the front end. So it's incredibly powerful. You have an infinite grid, you have also paging. So everything is there and it's quite easy to get it to work. And we will be using these components for our time tracker project. Also, if you want to look at our fully working grid, we have another example here. This is the XJS version. And as you can see, it has a lot of different options. You can have widgets inside your grid. You can have links. You can have progress bars, other kinds of widgets. You can style each cell, of course. You can have actions. So if you have some time later, you can go in to sencha.com/grid panel and you can take a look at it. But what about ReExt? Well, you can grab everything I just showed you and take it into React by using ReExt. And that's what we're going to be looking at today and the next session. Uh, One of the advantages of using Sencha is you're getting all the components from Sencha. You don't have to mix and match, which that's not quite secure. You're grabbing the grid from one place, you're grabbing your form from another one, you're trying to share code from different places. Here you have everything. So you can just grab React and Sencha and put them together with ReExt. That's where ReExt comes from. of course, from React, and Ext from Ext.js. This is the link I was just showing you. This is all the components. This is the documentation. Here you're gonna find all the information you need for components. Let's say you want to look at the Google Map component. You can go here. You can see how it works. Just basically copy and paste, adapt it a little bit for ReExt, and it will work. And down here, I'm showing you where to get ReExt. Of course, the easiest way is just to go to the Sencha website, try the software by submitting your data at the right. You will get a download and you can get everything ready to work. Another way to get it is just to go to the NPM website, and here you can look at some explanations how to get your project to work. And of course, you can just download it by using the NPM. And if you want to look at some of the components working, you can look at this demo. This is using a basic theme. This theme is trying to look like an old Windows app, but you can change the theme to one of our newest ones, which is the material theme or the Triton theme. That's what I'm gonna be doing today anyways. And here you can go in and look at the code. It's just React. All the instructions are basically inside the ReExt tag, and it's got its own props, and we're going to be talking about those. Of course, you can just go in and take a look at them, see how they work. This is going to be growing as time goes by. This is just the basic example for now, and this is a little bit of a work in progress, so you might find a few options that are not 100% complete. But if you want to go in and check that out, this is the link here. Also take in mind that Sencha XJS is object-oriented. It can use both MVC or MVVM patterns. It also has two toolkits. One is the modern toolkit and the other one is the classic one. The first is mainly for mobile devices. Doesn't have to, but it's mainly for those ones. The classic is more for desktop applications, but they're not exclusive, meaning if you create something classic, it will work just fine on mobile. And if you do the opposite, it will work on both without a problem. Also, Sencha XJS, apart from its SDK, it also comes with more applications. For example, Sencha Architect, which is a low-code development tool. It also comes with Sencha Themer, which will help us give the style to our application. We will be actually using that one on session 6. Okay, finally, after that long introduction, let's start creating our project. Here I have the code we need to create our first application. This is by using Vite. Like I said, if you don't want to use Vite, if you just want to use NPM, you can do it too. Basically, if you look at the code, it's kind of the same. One is just using npx, and the other one is using Vite to create the application. Do the one you like. We have a third option, which is using the ReExt designer. This is just a VS Code extension, and right now it's a preview version, but you can get the VS IX extension from this URL here. This one, it makes it a little bit easier. If you just go into code and select a few options, it will create your application. Anyways, I will be using Vite like I just said. So let's try this out. I'm using Windows, so I'm gonna open a PowerShell window. From here, what I have to do is basically just copy these 6 lines here. Make sure this is the name of the folder of the application you want to create. So if you're going to copy and paste this, put here the name of your project. Please don't use dashes, try to keep it as simple as it can be. So I already did copy, I'm just gonna paste, not line by line, I can do that, but I just copied the 6th line. I'm pasting, and it's just gonna create the project. It will take a few minutes, but once this is done, we can go ahead and just work on our project. So let's give it a couple of minutes to finish. Once it's done, it's gonna ask me to start the project. I'm using Bit, so I have to run this line at the end, and that will let me test my application. If I just want to use npm, of course, instead I will be using npm start. So it's almost done. And now that it has finished, it's waiting for me to hit enter to run the application. I'm just gonna do just that. And now we have the sample application running here. Something really simple, it's just a basic grid. When we click on a row, it loads on the right. Well, if we want to change the layout, we can do it with this button, and basically it works the same. As you can see here, this is using the classic toolkit, and the theme is classic. XGS is coming from a remote server. That's why it's saying it is a trial. If you have a license, you can put it in your folder. We will be doing that later. But for now, I'm just gonna use remote to show you how it works. This is the project that was just created. So basically, we have a source folder, we have a public folder, and of course the node modules. We don't have to go in and change a lot of things. What I will be doing is just checking the source folder right now. Let me show you what was created. We have the main JSX file. This is the one that it's setting everything up. We can ignore for now the imports. What we have to look at is the ReExt data part there. As you can see, it's setting up our project. Here is the place where you go in and set everything up, activate what you need, what you have and you don't have. Because XJS comes into flavors. You have the enterprise version and you have the professional version. So for example, if you're using the professional version, you won't have access to the exporter one. You won't have access to any pivot packages, or you won't have access to the D3 adapter. So I have to make sure right now that everything is false, since I don't have access to those ones. I can also go in and change a few more things. For example, I can actually tell ReExt that I want to use its charts packages, also font awesome for icons. If I wanted to activate something else, I can just go in and say true, of course. Anyways, for now, I'm just gonna leave those two as true. Then, as you can see, here's the toolkit. This is loading the classic toolkit, and the theme is classic. I will be changing that in a few minutes. We have a few more options down at the bottom. We can change the locale. We can activate the debugging. We can activate debug. And we also have the location of the SDK. For now, I'm just gonna keep it on remote. But if I wanted to use my local version, in case I have a license, I would only change that to local, put it somewhere here inside public, and that would be it. It would be my local version. Right now, I'm using the trial version, so I'm just gonna leave it there remote. I just saved. Of course, of course, it's just gonna look the same. Like I said, it's just gonna look the same. Let me show you what happens if I change the theme to Triton. It has a different style now. It looks a lot better. Or what happens if I just change it to material? It looks better, although the height I have here is not helping. Will explain that in a few minutes, but let me just change it right now without much explanation. Now it makes a little bit more sense, and there it is. So like I was saying, you can have different styles, and we can create our own theme. So right now I'm just gonna leave it as Triton and it will look like this. Okay, this is the main idea on how to set up your basic project. Now, as you can see here, it is importing your application from the app file. So it's going to that one. And here is just basically a React component here. We have a few constants there. We have our return. We can put HTML there just like with any other component. But if we keep on looking, we can see that we have our first ReExt component, which is basically just the logo. Okay, and that one is loading this part over here. Then we have a button. As you can see, it has a few props. It has X type, style, config, on click. And as its name states, X type is the type of component. That's the most important prop that you're gonna have. This one defines the type of component you're gonna bring. How to know the name of the component? Like I just said a few minutes ago, just go into Sencha Docs, and from there you can look at anything you want. So let's say I want a text field. I will just look for it. It says here X type text field. So if I wanted a text field, instead of X type button, there I would type text field. The style is just basically the CSS of this element. Of course, this is JavaScript. This is not CSS. So in CSS, I would say it margin dash right. Here you have to use a camel case. Then we have the config option here. This is the second main one. So the most important one, like I said, is X type, then config. And the config is where you get anything that has to do with the XJS component and you can put it there. So for example, if I'm looking at the button here, I'm looking at a button here, every single configuration that you see here, either in the examples or down on the configs, you can put there. So align on scroll, arrow CLS, the class, doc, HTML, icon, whatever you see here, you can easily put it inside the config. For example, right now it's just using text direction and the width of 100%. But if I wanted to add an icon, I can just say icon class. And here I'm just gonna use a font awesome icon. Once I do that, I can look at my button and now it has that icon there. And then we have the events. All the events, if you're gonna use props, start with on and then the name of the event. If we go into our documentation, that's just here in the events. Just add the prefix on, start with an uppercase, and that's it. For example, on toggle, on focus, on enable, or you can do it inside the config and just say here listeners, and here I can do the same, click. But this will be using XJS and this will be using React. So it depends where you want to put your code. So that was the button. If we keep on scrolling down, we will get to see the grid that it's on the example. This is where I changed the height a few minutes ago. And we will be talking about this in a few minutes. We have the actual grid. It has its title, it has its columns, it has a data store that we usually use to get data from the backend. Right now, it's just hard coded there. We also have an event. And when that event happens, it's getting the data from the grid and putting it inside the form on the right or the bottom, depending on how you have set up this example. And that's basically what it has. There isn't much to it. So in the few minutes that we have left, what we will be doing is just creating our own grid that it's actually going to get data from an endpoint. If we have a little bit more time, we might do something else, but for now, that's what I'm going to be showing you today. Okay, now that we're up to this point, I'm just gonna go back to our code and I'm gonna start working on it to create our first ReExt example. So what I'm gonna do, like I said, is go back. I'm gonna open the app.jsx file. Basically, I'm gonna take everything out from the return, just leaving one div. And inside of it, I'm gonna create the first example. So like we said before, I'm gonna create our first component. For that, I'm gonna use the ReExt tag. And inside of it, I must specify the X type. If you remember, that's the prop that we need. So that's gonna be grid panel. Then the other option that we need, it's the prop config. And here we're gonna set up everything we need for the grid. Remember, just like I said, every option, it's on our documentation. So what can we do here? I'm just gonna add a title. Just gonna call it my first grid. This grid is gonna be showing some users there. So I could instead use the title users, but let's leave it like this for now. I'm gonna give it a height, say 400 pixels. And I guess for now, let's just test it like it is. And this is how it looks. It's grabbing the 100% of the screen. That's expected because of what we have set up before. And we have 400 pixels there. So instead of that, for now, I'm just gonna use 100 VH to get the whole viewport. What's next? Okay, when we want to see the actual grid, we need to add columns. So inside the config prop, I'm just gonna add columns. This is an array that will get the names and the titles for all the columns. We have plenty of options there that we're gonna look at on a different session, but for now, I'm just gonna do something simple. So with the property text, I can specify the title. The first column is just gonna be ID. And then with data index, I can specify the name of the variable that it's gonna come from the backend. So that's gonna be user underscore ID. Then I'm gonna give it a width. Just gonna say 120 pixels. And now I'm gonna add three more columns. So that's the first one, second, third, and fourth. This one is gonna be first name. The next one is gonna be last name. And the last one is gonna be email. Okay, we're gonna specify the width just in pixels. We can use CSS values by putting it between quotes, or we can use flex values. So let's say that I want the first name and the last name to occupy their remainder of the width and divide it equally. That's how I would do it. So if I save it, now if we go in and test it, this is what we have. We have the title and we have our four columns. Now, this is not showing any data yet. To connect to the backend, we need to use a store. That's also quite simple. Once again, in a different session, we're gonna put the store in a different file. But for now, I'm just gonna put it here, directly inside the grid panel. And all I have to do inside of it is establish a proxy. And that proxy is going to tell our store how it's going to connect to the backend. So basically here, all I'm going to do is give it a type. In this case, it's going to be a REST response. I have to give it a URL. We're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. And then I just have to tell ReExt how the data is going to be read. So that's going to be a JSON. And the data is going to use a root property. Let me show you what I'm talking about, which I know it's data, but let me use Postman to show you exactly what's going on. This is the endpoint I'm going to be using, reext.sencha.local dash endpoint dash catalog dash users. And the response is just gonna be this JSON down here. I'm gonna have a message, a flag that tells me the data was successfully retrieved, and an array under the variable data. So this is the root property I was entering on my code. And then I'll just have all the data there. This is just a test. Of course, I wouldn't expose this from the backend, even if it's encoded, even if I'm using some hash code, I wouldn't expose it. This is just, like I said, a basic example, so I didn't care. So let me put the URL there. This is the root property. And I'm missing one more thing. The store does not autoload by default, so I have to tell it autoload true if I want ReExt to get the data right from the beginning, and there it is. Now, one of the greatest things about ReExt is that the grid is fully working. I can sort by any column. I can rearrange the columns if I want to, or I can hide any of the columns. And that's just by default. I can add filters. I can change the color of a column. I can add images. I can add widgets, actions, and several different options there. So for now, this is just the basic grid. And just like I showed you before, if I go into main and just change the theme, let's say material, now the grid is going to look a lot different. This looks a lot more modern, right? So instead of that, let's say I just say classic. Now this kind of looks old, but we have those options and it changes in the fly. It's quite fast, as you can see. So anyways, let's change a few more things. I can see that the email column is quite short. So instead of 120 pixels, I'm gonna say 300. Now we have this. And let's also do a few more things. Right now, the sorting is happening on the front end. This is fine because I only have 10 rows. But if I had a million and I was using paging, this is just gonna sort whatever I see on screen. If I want to tell ReExt that it should sort on the backend, all I have to do is inside the store, I have to say remote sort true. Same deal with the filters. If I want to use filters on the backend, remote filters true. And that's it. It will filter now on the backend instead of on the front end. So you can see it kind of flashes whenever I click. That's because it's retrieving the data again every time I sort. Let's say that we want to add a toolbar. Just do it inside the config. All I would have to do is add a toolbar by using the T bar key there. T is not for tool. This is actually top bar. I have different options. I can use B bar for a bottom toolbar or T bar for a toolbar at the top of the screen. So I'm using this one right now. By default, it's gonna add buttons. So I don't have to specify any type. I'll just say text, refresh. Let's add a new one. Here I'm just gonna say text, um, new user. And by just doing that, I will get those two buttons there. If I want to push them to the right, all I have to do is add a special key here, which is basically an arrow. And every element that is after the arrow is going to get pushed to the right, just like that. Okay, these are buttons. If I wanted to do something else with them, I could add an icon. For example, I can use Font Awesome to have a sync icon there. Let's put here a plus symbol. If I wanted a handler, I can just type handler and then program it here. If I wanted to do to do it some other way, I can do it quite easily. It's not on the scope of today's session, but we're gonna do it later on one of the following sessions. Let's just say here x.message.alert. Here I'm just gonna say hello. So if we go ahead and test it, now whenever I click on refresh, I'm gonna get that. Of course, I could actually refresh, but instead of using this button, I'm gonna add another toolbar. I'm gonna add this one on the bottom of the screen. This one also can receive an array, but if I want to create a paging toolbar, I should not use an array. I should just put it like this. And the X type for this toolbar is just basically paging toolbar. Let's save. Let's take a look at it again. And now we have the toolbar at the bottom. Of course, I only have 10 rows. Usually, XJS shows us pages of 25 rows. We will also take a look at that later. If we don't want paging, we could also use an infinite grid, which we will do, but not right now. And I'm just gonna do one more thing to the grid just to show you what we can do with a different prop. So we're just gonna call the React method onSelect. I'm gonna define it up here. So const onSelect. And I think I'm just gonna use an arrow function. So let's just do it like this. It's gonna receive two parameters. One is the actual grid and the other one is the selected row. Okay, just to see if it's working, I'm just gonna use a console log. And I'm gonna show the selected row dot data. And if it's working correctly, when we click on a couple of rows, we're gonna see that on the actual console down here. Okay. So instead of doing this, what we're gonna do is just open a window and show it the data in the window. Of course, later on we're gonna create an edit window, but today I just wanted to show you how to open a window from here. So I'm gonna create a new window. I'm gonna say let my window equals. And one way to create objects with ReExt is by using the XJS method xCreate. Here I can specify the type of object. This is also on our documentation. And here I can specify the config properties. So I'm just gonna say that it's got a title called details. It's got a width of 400 pixels, a height, let's say the same thing, 400 pixels. I'm gonna add a body padding of 16 pixels. That's the actual inset margin. And for now, I'm just gonna add some HTML that says hello world. Okay, this is gonna create a window, but it's not gonna show it. If we want to show it, let's just say my window dot show. Let's go and test it. Now, if I click on an option, I get this window. By default, it is not a model window, so every time I'm clicking on a different option, it's gonna open a new window. I'm just gonna say that this window is in fact a model window. And as you can see now, when I click on a row, I get a model window. Okay, even though it's got a close button on the top, I'm gonna add a toolbar at the bottom. So we already learned that we could use vbar. However, just to show you a different option, I'm gonna use buttons. It is also an array, but this one is used more on Windows. And here I'm just gonna say text. Let's say save. I'm gonna put a different button that's gonna say cancel. Same deal, I can put an icon in there if I wanted to. I'm not gonna do so, but I'm gonna put a handler on the first one. And all I'm gonna do inside this handler is just gonna say my window.close. Let's actually do the same for save and cancel. Of course, they wouldn't be the same, but for now, that will do. And now we have the cancel button and the save button. Okay, and finally, instead of just showing the hello world text, what I'm gonna do there, something really simple. I'm just gonna say uh, name colon, and I'm gonna concat selected row dot data dot first name space selected row dot data dot last name. And I can keep on adding a lot more text in it, or I could add fields if I wanted to. But for now, for today's example, that would be it. As you can see, that's what I have now. Okay. So as you can see, it is quite easy to add all those options into ReExt. Doesn't take that long of a time. It works quite fast. So we will be using this grid later on as our user grid. This is where we will be able to create users and block them. So this is the beginning of our application. We're gonna do a lot more things to it, but for now, that's it. I just have one more option to show you, and that's how to get your application to run from a local SDK. That's quite easy. All you have to do is to get your XJS folder inside the public folder in your application. So this is my SDK. It's right here inside public. Once you get it there, all you have to do is just go into location, change it to local, and that will make it run. But if you don't want to have it in your local folder for now, you can just set it as remote. The best idea is to use local because remote it's for the trial edition. And as you have seen today, that's gonna just leave that watermark on the titles and in some buttons. Also, you only have 1 month trial, so it's better not to leave it there. And once you have your SDK, that's all you have to do. Just as a side note, if you do own a valid license, you can go into the support panel, go into downloads, and this is where you download the SDK. Basically, just take it from here and then move it into this folder, and that's it. You have you'll have your valid license and you will be able to use ReExt because, like we said, ReExt is available for all XJS users with valid licenses. So if you have professional or you have enterprise, it doesn't matter. It is there for you. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's session. Okay, and now let's continue with our short session of questions and answers. I'm gonna do my best to answer as many as I can right now. We don't have much time, so I apologize in case I don't get to your question. And if that happens, I'm gonna make sure that at the beginning of the next session, I'm gonna answer those questions, or I'm gonna include those topics in the next sessions. So please, once again, if you have any questions, leave them in the panel, and we will do our best to answer. Thank you, and let's move on. Okay, so finally we have reached the part of the questions and answers. I see a couple of questions here in the panel, nothing too complex. If you have any questions, please type them in. If you have any things that you want to learn during the following 7 sessions, go ahead, or something that you would want me to integrate into the application. I'd love to hear your ideas. and I will modify what I have so that it makes more sense to each of you. Um, so just to sum up, so today all we did was build a basic grid and learn about ReExt. On the next session, we're gonna learn more about components. We're gonna connect to the backend. We're gonna finish that user grid by adding a form and letting it connect to the backend and save the data and retrieve it from there. And then we're gonna start working on session 3 on the next part of the time tracker, like we talked at the beginning. And so one of the questions I'm seeing here is it's Robert who's asking me where to get ReExt. Well, once again, this is the website, sencha.com/products/ReExt. Over here, you will get some information about the product, and down at the bottom, you can sign up for your 30-day trial. Sorry, I just got a message. Can you guys hear me? Everything should be fine on my side. Can you now hear me? I apologize, I'm double checking. Let's see, sorry about that. Okay, somebody's telling me the audio is okay for them. Well, before I continue with what I was saying, this is gonna be on YouTube. I don't know exactly when, but if you missed a part of the video, there's going to be a recording. I actually saw Irene just asked that if there's gonna be a recorded version of this session. Yeah, it's gonna be on YouTube. We will put it there, and we will also share it with everybody that subscribe to today's session. What else? Like I was saying, you can get it from here. Just enter your data. You will get the trial. We will officially announce it for the following month, but right now you can go here and download it anyways. Like I said, if you have a valid license, you can go and use your local SDK. Okay, what else? Let me see the question panel. Okay, Tony is asking me if all the components are available in ReExt. Yes, all of them are available. So the way it works, it's basically, I mean, I didn't create it, so I cannot say it being completely sure, but it's kind of a wrapper. So XJS is being taken and put into ReExt. So anything that is there, you can just call it with this ReExt component. And everything that is a function, a method, or a class, you can just call it by using the object ext. So you will get the whole power of ext and you will bring it to your application. I think that's it for now. I have a few more questions, but they're kind of complex to answer right now. I cannot go into code and start coding in the few minutes we have. So I'll make sure that Andrew's and who's that and Mark's questions I get to answer at the beginning of the next session, or I will include them as part of the topics of that session. I want to thank everybody from being here. Hopefully you enjoyed this session. This was a lot of text heavy. Then the following ones are going to be more hands-on. So hopefully you get to enjoy it a lot more. So once again, thank you everybody, and I'll see you soon. I'll see you in the next session. Thank you.